All right, let's dive right in. We're looking at India's ambitious new budget today. And honestly, to call it just a budget is kind of missing the point. Think of it less as a set of numbers and more as a strategic blueprint, one that's designed to fundamentally rewire the entire Indian economy for the next decade.
You know, at the very heart of this plan, there's a huge philosophical shift going on. The government isn't just talking about reform anymore. Instead, they're framing everything around this word, kartavya. It's a Hindi word that means a deep sense of national duty. So we're moving away from just making small changes to taking on these huge, long-term responsibilities.
And this whole duty strategy, it basically rests on three powerful pillars. First, de-risking the economy from all the global shocks and surprises out there. Second, connecting every single corner of the country with massive new infrastructure. And third, building what they're calling sovereign capacity, which is a fancy way of saying becoming truly self-reliant in the industries that matter most.
So what's the end game here? What are these three pillars all building towards? Well, it's all about one single objective: accelerating India's journey to becoming Viksit Bharat, or a developed India. The vision is to create a nation that's resilient, super capable, and truly inclusive for every single citizen.
Now, of course, none of this ambition means anything without some serious financial discipline, and that's what we're seeing here. The government is staying on its path of fiscal consolidation, planning to shrink the deficit even further. So why does this matter? Well, it's pretty simple. The less the government borrows, the more credit is freed up for private companies to invest, to build, and to really drive growth.
All right, let's dig into that first pillar, de-risking the economy. And the government's #1 tool for getting this done? A complete top-to-bottom overhaul of the entire tax system.
And when I say overhaul, I mean it. The centerpiece of this whole strategy is, well, it's monumental. They're literally replacing the Income Tax Act of 1961, a law that's been around for over 60 years, with a brand new, simplified act designed for the modern world. This is a once-in-a-generation kind of change.
So if you're an investor or trader, this is where you want to pay close attention. A few loopholes are being closed. For sovereign gold bonds, that tax-free benefit, it now only applies if you're the original buyer and you hold it all the way to maturity. Share buybacks are now taxed as capital gains, and for the really active traders, the tax on derivatives is going up, which means the cost of frequent trading is about to get a bit higher. There's also a major push to get overseas assets into the official system. The government's opening a one-time 6-month window to declare them. And it's a 2-track system. Category A is for bringing totally undisclosed assets into the fold, and that comes with a pretty hefty tax bill. But Category B is a much softer route for people who just made a paperwork mistake, letting them fix it with a small fee. But listen, it's not all about tightening the screws and boosting compliance. These tougher measures are being very carefully balanced with specific tax reliefs, all aimed at improving what the government is calling ease of living for the average person.
And you can really see that balancing act here. The tax on money sent overseas for education or medical care slashed to a flat 2%. Any compensation you get for land acquired by the government is now completely tax-free. And, really importantly, interest you earn on compensation from accident claims is now also fully exempt. These are changes that are going to directly help families in some really specific and often difficult situations.
Okay, let's pivot to that second pillar, which is this huge push to build sovereign supply chains. This is all about securing India's self-reliance in the industries that are going to define the future.
You know, the budget is really asking a fundamental question here about economic strategy in the 21st century. In a world with so much geopolitical volatility and trade disruption, how do you actually shock-proof your economy?
And it answers that question with a really clear pivot. The old model, it was all about being just one part of a global supply chain. You'd import components, assemble them, and that was it. The new model, under this idea of Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, is about owning the entire supply chain from the raw materials all the way to the finished product.
So, first things first, you've got to secure the raw materials of the future. India is setting up these dedicated rare earth corridors in 4 states that are rich in these minerals. But the goal isn't just to dig them out of the ground. It's to create an entire ecosystem to process them and manufacture things with them, specifically targeting products like permanent magnets, which are absolutely essential for the electric vehicle industry.
Next up, to tackle another key area where India relies on imports, a massive new scheme is being launched. And it's being backed by a serious amount of cash. 10,000 crore rupees. So, what's all that money for? The mission is to build a domestic industry for shipping containers from the ground up. This is a really strategic move, designed to cut down India's heavy reliance on China, which pretty much dominates the global market for this crucial piece of logistics hardware. The budget is also making some really long-term bets on the energy transition. Check this out. They're extending customs duty exemptions for nuclear power projects all the way out to 2035. That gives the industry a full decade of policy certainty, which is huge for attracting investment. And alongside that, there's a massive 20,000 crore rupee investment to push forward futuristic carbon capture technology. And finally, the strategy includes creating these specialized plug-and-play industrial hubs. We're seeing new chemical parks, but the really big news is Phase 2 of the India semiconductor mission. The focus is shifting upstream. It's not just about making chips anymore. It's about designing them completely in-house and, critically, manufacturing the incredibly complex equipment you need to make them in the first place. Okay, let's tackle the third and final pillar. Using absolutely massive infrastructure projects to connect all these new economic engines together and act as a true growth multiplier. The headline grabber here, for sure, is a new national grid of 7 high-speed rail corridors. I mean, look at these routes. They're designed to connect major economic hubs and population centers, slashing travel times and creating a level of connectivity the country has just never seen before. Now, a really crucial piece of this puzzle is happening down south. 3 of those new corridors will connect Chennai, Bengaluru, and Hyderabad, creating what's being called a golden triangle. The big idea here is to merge these powerhouse tech hubs into a single, seamless economic zone to supercharge collaboration, innovation, and the movement of talent. We're also seeing an evolution in urban policy. Think of this as moving beyond the original Smart Cities mission. This new concept of city economic regions will develop entire urban areas based on what makes them unique, on their specific economic strengths, whether that's tech, manufacturing, or even religious tourism, with the specific mention of developing temple towns.
And this isn't just an idea on paper. This isn't just talk. Each one of these designated regions is being backed by an initial 5,000 crore rupees just to kickstart its development. There is serious money behind this vision.
And there are some really creative policies in here for logistics and the marine economy. Get this, fish caught by Indian boats in international waters and then delivered directly to a foreign port will now be considered a duty-free export. That's brilliant. It essentially turns the entire fishing fleet into floating export units. And that's on top of new freight corridors and even incentives for seaplanes to connect those hard-to-reach places. So, okay, we've seen the massive macro plan, the taxes, the industrial strategy, the infrastructure, but what does all this actually mean for people and for specific business sectors on the ground?
Well, in the rural sector, there's a definite shift away from just subsidies towards creating real lasting value. We're talking about missions to build global brands for products like Indian cashews and cocoa, deploying AI tools to give farmers customized data-driven advice, and empowering women's self-help groups to actually become owners of their own retail stores.
Healthcare is also getting a major push. There are plans for 5 new regional medical hubs built through public-private partnerships to really boost medical tourism. And, so importantly, to address a major gap in the country, a second campus of the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences is going to be set up in North India.
You know, when you dig into the fine print, you find some really targeted policies that could be huge game changers. That tax holiday for data centers goes all the way to 2047. That's a massive signal to the world to make India a global data hub. You also see longer tax breaks for the Gift City financial hub, and a clever protectionist move, where customs exemptions are being removed on things like video game parts to encourage local manufacturing.
So, let's step back. When you put all these different pieces together, the tax reform, the industrial strategy, the infrastructure blitz, the targeted policies, what's the final picture? What does this budget tell us about India's future?
I think the best way to describe it is structurally aggressive, but visually quiet. It completely avoided any big, splashy populist announcements designed to grab headlines. Instead, the focus is on deep, foundational, and yes, sometimes complex changes to the country's entire economic architecture.
It all just circles right back to those 3 pillars we've been talking about: de-risking, connecting, and building. These 3 ideas are really the key to understanding the government's entire approach.
This quote from an analysis of the budget just sums it up perfectly.
The overarching strategic thrust is to de-risk the economy, enhance connectivity, and build sovereign capacity in critical sectors for the coming decade. See, it's not a plan for just 1 year. It's a clear, articulated blueprint for the next 10.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. This budget is a massive bet. It's a gamble that prioritizes long-term structural change over the temptation of short-term stimulus and quick wins. The vision is incredibly ambitious, the blueprint is detailed, but the crucial question remains. Will this decade-long gamble truly pay off and transform India into a developed nation? Well, I guess only time will tell.